The movie begins with C and M, a married couple who are cuddled up on their sofa talking. M tells her husband that her family used to move a lot when she was little and would hide little notes wherever she lived so that if she ever wanted to go back, there would be a little piece of her waiting. M voices her desire to move to a different place, but C, who's a musician, is resistant to making the change, which creates tension in their relationship. M does most of the packing on her own as her husband works on his new song. Hearing the ruckus in the living room, C asks his wife what she was doing, to which M responds that she was moving the piano to see if she could move it. C wonders if they were taking it with them, but his wife assures him that the landlord had been willing to give it to them if they wanted it. He tells her to be careful because he'd just tuned it, but she tells him that he'd done that over a year ago. M asks her husband if she should try and find movers, but he seems too preoccupied with his work to respond to her, which upsets her. M walks away, and C doesn't even notice. One night, while the couple are sleeping, a loud noise wakes them up. They go to the living room to check what was out there, but can't find anything, so they just assume that something must have fallen on the piano and go back to bed. A few days later, C gets into a horrible car accident and dies. M is called to the morgue to identify the body. The doctor unsheets the body, revealing C's unmoving body. M asks to be given a few minutes to say her goodbyes. She looks at C's cold body for a few minutes before covering him back up with the white sheet and walking away. Several minutes later, C awakens as a ghost and starts wandering the hospital hallways, invisible to the eyes of the living. Still wearing the hospital sheet over his face and body with 2 holes cut out for him to see, he makes it past the hallways and into an empty corridor. At the end of the corridor, a door filled with light opens, but he makes no attempt to go through it, so the door closes. C walks to his home all the way from the hospital and stands for several minutes in different parts of the house, just watching the place. In the kitchen, C stares at the picture of M and him stuck on the fridge with a magnet. C hears a knock at the door and watches as their landlord drops off a pie. Seeing that M isn't home, she leaves a note on the pie. M returns home and finds the pie with the note sticking to it. After cleaning up the table, she sits down on the floor and eats as much of the pie as she could before throwing up. She then folds herself up into the fetal position on her bed and cries, while her ghost husband tries to console her but is unable to. Unable to communicate with her, C watches M grieve and then slowly move on with her life. While C waits for M to return, C sees another ghost covered by a flower print sheet through the window of the next house. The ghost tells C, through silent communication, that it's waiting for someone, but it can't remember who. Depressed by the interaction, C sits on the sofa and continues to wait. Time flies and it's already dark before M finally makes it home, but she's brought with her another man. They kiss on the doorway as C jealously watches from the couch and starts creating disturbances around the house. In the morning, M sees the books that C had flung on the floor during his tantrum and leans down to pick it up. She notices that one of the books had been opened to a specific page. She reads a few lines while C watches her intently, but doesn't think anything of it and simply cleans up the mess. Later, M lays down on the floor listening to one of her husband's songs and recalls the first time he'd played it for her. They were having an argument, which C was trying to avoid, but M asks him if they can at least talk about it tomorrow. He placed a headphone over her ears and played the music. She remembered being enticed by the flow and the rhythm of the song, just like she was feeling in that moment, laying on the floor and remembering her dead husband. C stands over his wife and watches over her as she gets lost in memory. Days later, M starts packing in preparation of her move. She boxes up her belongings and makes sure she hasn't left anything behind while the movers pick up the boxes and drop them off in the truck. When the house is finally empty, she paints over the rough patches of the house. She then writes a note like she used to when she was a child, then hides it in one of the moldings of the door before painting over it. M looks around the house one last time before walking out the door and driving away. C stands by the window, watching her car pull out of the driveway and into the main road, unable to follow her. C is left in the empty house all alone and tries to get to the note M had left in the wall, but is unable to reach it. While he's trying to get at it, the front door opens and 2 children race into the house. C realizes that this Spanish-speaking single mother has rented out the place and moved into the house with her young son and daughter. He watches as the children do their homework and their mom calls them to the dining table for supper. In another moment, the mom teaches her daughter how to play the piano in the living room. He watches as the children play with their toy trains, celebrate Christmas, and live their lives. One night, the little boy is awakened by the sound of something moving in his room. Frightened, he wakes up his sister and tells her that he was scared and that he thinks there's something in the room with them. While they stare at the closet, it slowly opens, making the little girl scream and hurry to her mom's room. The boy, trying to be courageous, aims at the empty space that C was standing in and attempts to shoot it with a toy gun. The children had sensed C's presence and wouldn't sleep in their own room, so they both went to their mom's bedroom. The mom tries to calm her daughter down by hugging her and rocking her back and forth. One night, while the family's having dinner, C knocks down one of the frames housing the family's picture. He then heads to the kitchen and starts breaking plates and glasses on the wall, scaring the family almost to death. When C's tantrum was over and everything's calmed down, the mom starts cleaning up the broken plates. C goes back to jabbing at the wall, trying to reach the note M had left. He continued to do so even after the Spanish family had left. C walks to the window and sees the same ghost covered under a flower sheet sitting by the window. The ghost asks C who was in the house, but C lets the ghost know that he's alone. The ghost is upset, hoping that the person he was waiting for had come back. C notices that there was a party going on in the house next door and decides to pay a visit. As he walks into the dining room, he sees a group of people having a conversation. A man is making a profound speech about God and the universe. A brown-haired woman says to the group that if her pursuits don't earn her any money, that she doesn't see the point of doing it. She explains that it was the reason why she stopped writing her novel. To this, a man sitting in front of her chastises her for money being her only motivation. He responds by claiming all creative pursuits are pointless, as the universe will eventually end. Upset by the conversation, C starts flickering the light, and the partygoers notice. Due to the constant disturbances, C's house becomes abandoned and falls into a bad condition. C hasn't stopped picking at the wall, trying to get the note out. While he almost gets it, his efforts are interrupted by a bulldozer crashing through the wall. The house next door is undergoing the same demolition. C stands in the rubble of what was once his home and stares at the trucks that completely destroyed the house. He looks across the street at the other destroyed house, the ghost in the flower-patterned sheet watching him. They stare at each other for a while until the ghost tells C that he doesn't think they're coming and then disappears from underneath the sheet. C is left standing alone, watching the empty sheet on the ground. As he stands there, the place is completely transformed, and a skyscraper is built on the land that the house used to be on. As the skyscraper develops, C walks through the halls and rooms, watching the development. Once the building is complete, he continues to watch the furnished rooms and the people who eventually occupy it. C heads to the roof of the building and sees the futuristic city. Then, he jumps off the ledge. The celestial sphere rotates in reverse, and C finds himself in a field in the 19th century, with a man who's driving stakes into the ground. Days later, as he stands in the same spot on the same field, he watches a carriage arrive with the man's wife and his 3 daughters. The oldest daughter sews clothes, while her mother sets up the fire and prepares dinner for the family. Once they say grace, the family has their dinner, and they gather around the fire for warmth. In the morning, C watches the youngest daughter crawl out of the tent and write a note while humming to the tune of C's song, then hides the note under a rock. Later that day, the family is attacked and murdered by Native American soldiers and left on the land they'd planned to build a house on. C stands by the corpses and watches the youngest daughter's body decay until a bone remains and tall grass grows to cover it. C is made to return to his house, which was empty except for the piano and the refrigerator. He watches as his past self, along with M, are shown into the house by the landlord. She tells them that the place has 2 bedrooms and a bathroom in the back. She explains where the kitchen was and that the place had a den around back. The landlord lets them know that she hasn't had any tenants for a few months, while C tries the piano. The landlord tells them that the piano has always been there and they could keep it if they wanted to. C watches himself walk around, lost in thought, until M slams on the window and scares him back into reality. C sees his life in the house repeat itself. M asks him what it was about the house that he liked so much, and he tells her that the place has history. He explains to her that the two have a long history in the house, and that he wasn't willing to let go of it just yet. He watches himself and M cuddling on their sofa as she tells him about her secret habit of hiding notes. He witnesses their last argument when M tells him that this wasn't how relationships were supposed to work, and that they should be making decisions together. When she asks C why she was the only one making the decisions, C tells her that he doesn't want what she wants. That night, while they're together in bed, C finally gives in to his wife's constant demand. Upon hearing this, C's ghost sits heavily on the piano, creating the bang that had earlier startled the couple. He watches as his past self and M hurry to the living room to check what had happened, and then dismiss what had happened and go back to bed. Later, C watches his earlier ghost self watch M leave the house for the last time. He gets up from the piano where he's been sitting to watch everything that had happened, and then finally retrieves the note M had left. Upon reading it, he disappears, the now empty sheet covering him falling on the ground. Alright, are you ready to binge another movie recap? Make sure to click that video that's on screen now. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.